is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of KCS Update. I am your host, Tucker Franklin, presented by DraftKings. Thank you to the fine folks at DraftKings for presenting to you this show. I'm so happy. I could not be happier to be joined by my dear friend, Sterling Holmes of ESPN Kansas City Sports Radio 810, also the Arrowhead Addict podcast, the Stacking the Box podcast. Sterling, did I forget anything this time?
No, you're golden. I also sell real estate. So yeah, I slang homes too, baby. I do a little bit of everything, yeah.
Slang homes. Sterling Holmes on Holmes. Hey, that's already a TV show. I don't think I can say that. I think that might be copyrighted.
TM.
But you can follow him on Twitter at HomestretchKC. Remember last time I didn't remember it. Now I do. I remembered it. So we are already off on a better foot. How are you surviving this Chiefs offseason?
I'm not, frankly. I am struggling. A copious amount of drugs. No, I'm kidding. I'm being facetious. The Royals baseball has just been atrocious. So I've golfed a lot. Been on a few golf trips, got a few more plans. I've been golfing, reading books. I mean, come on. When the Royals are that bad, you're making me read books. There's something going on. So yes, I need Chiefs football to come ASAP.
You're touching grass. The Royals have made you touch grass, is what it sounds like.
Yeah. Touched it, licked it, did a little bit of both.
Well, doing it all with the grass. No, I was on Sterling. I was on your program, your fine program, Monday night where we talked about the Kansas City Royals. Look at me going on. I cover the Chiefs, but you said, Tucker, I don't want you to talk about the team you cover. I want you to talk about the Kansas City Royals. That's what I want you to talk about. And I said,
well, you're a beer bat aficionado. You're the perfect guy for what I do.
Yeah, I mean, everybody loves them. But another thing that I think I'm an aficionado at, Joshua Briscoe thinks I'm aficionado at, apparently, power rankings. We're back with some more power rankings. Usually we reserve this show for the Thursday edition. I've got a really good Thursday show planned for you guys to make sure you stay tuned, subscribe, do all that good stuff. But today we are doing the power rankings early. And Sterling, I thought, I had said, when I thought of this topic, I said, I need Sterling to do this. We are power ranking the top 5 receivers the Chiefs will face in 2023. Now, I want to know, Sterling, when I sent you that message, when I shot you a message, said, hey, do you want to power rank these? What were your thoughts?
I thought, wow, I am bleeping in. As a man who power ranks porch drinking beers, porch drinking songs, this is right down my alley. And we have Chiefs. I don't want to say to talk about because it's still the offseason. We're still projecting a little bit here. But this is fun. We get to talk Chiefs. I no longer have to read books or touch grass. I get to power rank wide receivers in Chiefs face. 100%.
So let's go ahead and get into it. Sterling, we're going to start with number 5, work our way down to number 1 because we're pros here. Because that's how it happens. You got to get a good lead into it. We're going to make you wait all the way to the end for number 1. So number 5, Sterling, who do you have as your 5th best wide receiver the Chiefs will face in the year 2023 of our Lord?
Man, this was really tough because there are some very good wide receivers. I think it actually might be A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown might slide in at number 5.
I like that because, Sterling, that's who I have at number 5, is A.J. Brown. Second team All-Pro from A.J. Brown, 1,496 yards, almost got to that 1,500-yard mark, 11 touchdowns and 88 catches last season. Had a really good year. Obviously has a really good quarterback in Jalen Hurts, but he's 4th in receiving yards last season, 3rd in receiving touchdowns. And there were a lot of guys kind of on the fence. I was going back and forth about it. Sterling, as you mentioned, the Chiefs play a lot of really good teams and a lot of really good wide receivers on those teams. We'll hit probably some of the honorable mentions at the end of the show. But A.J. Brown, I have as my number 5 as well. So let's just keep it moving. Let's keep it moving down the line. Number 4, who do you have?
I have Jamar Chase. I don't know if it's going to ruffle any Bengals fans' feathers here, not having him higher, but I think Jamar Chase at 4 is right in line. Again, nothing against him, but I just think there's 3 dudes who are clearly better than Jamar. I know a lot of Kansas City Chiefs fans probably have a little slightly blurred version of how good Jamar Chase is because he perpetually seems to destroy Kansas City in some big moments, just mossing every single cornerback he goes up against. but that's not the reality. I think Jamar Chase is the fourth best wide receiver the Chiefs face this year.
So it's interesting that you say that, because with this guy, and I had trouble placing Jamar Chase. He did only play in like 12 games last year, I think. So kind of perception of him last year might have been skewed a little bit. I think he had the same amount of receiving touchdowns as Jerick McKinnon, so people will look at that and be like, oh, he didn't have that good of a year. It was only in 12 games. I know a lot of Chiefs fans like to think that he's a push-off artist. His rookie year was very not good in that department. He pushed off a whole lot. And he got away with it. He probably still does a little bit too. But my number 4 receiver that I have is Davante Adams. Had a really good, respectable year. You might think that's pretty low, but I think he had a very respectable year, 1,500. I think this year coming into it, though, he has Jimmy G as his quarterback, which could hamper him a little bit. That offense does seem like it could revolve around him and Josh Jacobs as well. But 1,516 yards, 14 touchdowns, and on 100 receptions in 2022. First team All-Pro last year. Led the league in receiving touchdowns as well. Third in receiving yards and fifth in yards per game, ninth in catches. So put up a very good year statistically, but I've got Davante Adams at my number 4.
Yeah, he's my 3. He's my 3,
okay.
but I think he's clear. Again, just me personally, I think he's clearly better than Jamar Chase. I think the top 3, if you want to slice and dice it any way with these top 3, I will entertain it. But I think Davante Adams is 3. I mean, he put up those numbers with a very slightly above average quarterback that for some reason likes to wear eyeliner and look like he's in a 1980s cover band. I mean, if you told me Derek Carr was in, I don't know, Twisted Sister, Motley Crue, I would totally believe it without a doubt. But that's who was throwing Davante Adams the rock. He still went for over 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns. He was incredible last year, just toiling away, though, on a brutal franchise. Now, Jimmy G, that is a downgrade from Derek Carr, but I can't go anywhere lower than 3 for Davante Adams.
So I have Jamar Chase at my number 3. We flip-flop our 3 and our 4. And again, that's what I said. I went back and forth on, who I wanted to put up my 3, who I wanted to put up my 4. There's so many good wide receivers that the Chiefs are playing this year. The Chiefs cornerbacks are going to have their hands full. So Jamar Chase, just over 1,000 yards last season, as I mentioned, 9 touchdowns in 12 games, missed some time with an injury, but still 7th in terms of yards per game, and tied for 6th in reception touchdowns as well, as I mentioned with Jerick McKinnon on that list. Tied for 6th in receiving touchdowns. Kind of crazy to think about. More receiving touchdowns than Tyreek Hill Jerick McKinnon had. What do you think about that, Sterling?
Tyreek Hill better. He clears.
He does clear indeed. But okay, Sterling, recapping, your 5, A.J. Brown, your 4, Jamar Chase, your 3, Davante Adams. Solid list, because my 5, A.J. Brown, my number 4, Davante Adams. And is it Devontae or Devonta? Because I've heard it pronounced both ways, by the way.
I think it's Devontae.
I think so too, but I've heard it pronounced Devonta. Also, he spells it with 2 A's. I don't like the way he spells his name. I want that on the record.
Well, I think it's Devonta Smith, maybe, because there's an A at the end of Devonta Smith for the Eagles. I think I feel bad for doing that, for cracking an egg of knowledge on you. But
got egg on my face now on my own program. Wow, why would you do that to me, Sterling? But you're right. He definitely does not have an A at the end of it. But I don't like how he spells his name. Still don't like how he spells his name. And then so I have Jamar Chase at number 3, Sterling. Listen, a lot of good wide receivers. I think we might have the same 1 and 2, which is incredibly interesting because there's at least one wide receiver that I thought was going to make one of our lists that has not appeared yet. So go ahead, Sterling. Give me your number 2. Who do you got at your number 2 wide receiver?
I'm actually going to go with Justin Jefferson. I went back and forth with this, but the reason why my number 1 is number 1 is because there's a little something extra. There's a little something that I think he wants to do to Kansas City to try and prove a point. Surprisingly, 1 and 2 both don't have incredible quarterbacks throwing the ball. Like, it's Tua Tagovailoa and it's Kirk Cousins, which, shocker, it's not Jalen Waddle as my number 1. But we'll get to that in just a second. Justin Jefferson is my number 2. He did take over games for Minnesota last year, which is wild to think about for a wide receiver. Was against the Bills when Kirk Cousins was throwing the ball all over the place, not even near Jefferson. He was somehow coming down with the ball, and you're sitting here like, how? Is this go-go gadget, like just going out and getting the ball? But I have Jefferson at number 2.
Interesting. My number 2, I think, is your number 1. It's Tyreek Hill. Listen, had a really good year last year. 1,700 yards and 7 touchdowns on 119 catches. He was second in receptions, yards per game, behind who my number 1 is and your number 2. Still very good, averaged over 100 yards per game. But as you mentioned, I think the very interesting point, Tua Tagovailoa is not like the best quarterback he had. So like still having a 1,700-yard season with that quarterback, impressive.
I'm going to bring a point here that hopefully sways you. Not only was it not is it Tua Tagovailoa, it wasn't always Tua Tagovailoa. It was Skylar Thompson. It was who else was? They had someone else throwing the ball to Tyreek at one point. So the point is that 1,700. While I don't think Tyreek, how he said he's going to go over 2,000 yards receiving and all that stuff, well, I think it's a little bullish for me. I do think it could have been better. Yeah, there's Jalen Waddle, who's taken a lot of yards away from him, but you also can make the case that it also opens up and allows more one-on-ones for Tyreek Hill. So I think Tyreek Hill actually could go over that 1,700, while I think Justin Jefferson, I would be shocked if he goes over 1,800. There's not enough help on that Vikings team. I almost think Waddle can open up the playbook in the field a little bit for Tyreek.
I said too. Tyreek Hill is, talking a lot, as he does, but he has every right to, because he put up a very good season last year. Chiefs fans have every right to talk as well, because the Chiefs offense put up a very good year. My number 1, Justin Jefferson, led the league in yards, receiving yards per game, and total yards per game. Fits in MVP voting. He was the offensive player of the year, first team All-Pro, a Pro Bowler, 1,800 yards, man. That's a lot of yards, and 8 touchdowns on 128 catches. That was 9 catches more than second place, which I believe was Tyreek Hill. Yeah, and about 20 catches more than Travis Kelce, who was 3rd or 4th on that list. So he is their offense. I know you kind of talked about him already being like a go-to gadget type guy. He's making plays that, like that catch against the Bills, unreal, dude. Like he has that ability when you watch him play. It's just it stands out, and he passes the eye test, he passes the numbers test, he passes pretty much all the tests you can bring. I think he's the best in our game right now. And listen, there's a lot of really good wide receivers on this list that we haven't even talked about yet, but Justin Jefferson, I think, tops them all.
I think the most underrated guy we didn't talk about, because I have to throw his name out there. Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah,
Amon-Ra St. Brown has to be the most under-talked about, underrated, undervalued wide receiver in the NFL for the Detroit Lions. It's Jared Goff. And Jared Goff had maybe his best year as an NFL quarterback with Amon-Ra St. Brown as his wide receiver 1. Yeah. He was unreal last year. So I got to give a shout out to him. That's a great name, great performer. And the Lions are a fun team to root for, so I'm all in on Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I don't think the Lions hype has ever been higher, honestly, truthfully. I think this is the most excited that non-Lions fans have ever been excited about the Lions. And even Lions fans exclusively have been excited about the Lions because they've got some dudes on that team. It's very exciting for that team. A guy that, Sterling, we did not mention, and I'm sure people have noticed already that we did not mention, Stephon Diggs is a guy that didn't make either of our lists. I went back and forth if I wanted to put him at 5. What's the reason that you didn't put him over A.J. Brown?
I don't think he's as much of a game changer as A.J. Brown is. I think if you want to throw it up in the end zone, you're going A.J. Brown. If you're running a fly, a streak, I think you're probably still going A.J. Brown. I have nothing against Stephon Diggs. He's a great wide receiver, but I don't know what he does better than A.J. Brown. I don't know if he changes a game the way A.J. Brown does. Part of it's the size. I like Stephon Diggs. This, again, not a knock against him. He's a very, very good wide receiver, but at least in my mind, I would take A.J. Brown over Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going through, kind of pouring through the numbers. I just looked at A.J. Brown last year. When you talk about the eye test, man, he had one heck of a year. I was surprised that he was only a second-team All-Pro, but there's so many good wide receivers now in the league that a lot of the guys, like Calvin Ridley, was a guy that we didn't even talk about either, who's going to be playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars next year.
He's not even close. Come on. He's maybe top 10.
I thought about sneaking him top 5. I thought about it.
You're a hot take artist then. Come on,
Oh, come
Franklin.
on.
Franklin. We're not gonna go and throw in Calvin Ridley, who's sat out a year. Hell, is he better than Christian Kirk at this point? We don't know.
I guess you don't know, but you're going to just tarnish everything that Calvin Ridley's done in his career or just to say because he sat out a year? I don't think that's quite right.
I sat out more than a year. It's been how long has it been now? A year and a half?
By saying about like terms of days, he's out of a season.
Yeah. Because he missed all last year, and then he only played 5 games in 2021. He's had 1 year over 1,000 yards, which was great in 2020 with 1,374 yards and 9 touchdowns. Man, you go ahead.
I did put him at 5.
You go ahead and put him over Amon-Ra St. Brown, or go ahead. A dude taking over a year and a half off of football. Psh.
Buddy, he's now got a competent quarterback for the first time like ever. He's got Trevor Lawrence as his
Matt Ryan. He had Matt Ryan, who was not good. At that,
Matty Ice, baby.
He's fine. He was fine in 2020.
Listen, I think people could be surprised by what Calvin Ridley does this year. And I don't think that they should be surprised because Calvin Ridley has the offensive pedigree. It shouldn't be a shock.
You want to bet who has more yards into the year, Calvin Ridley or Christian Kirk?
Oh, I thought you were going to say Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Oh, I would take Amon-Ra St. Brown in a heartbeat.
Okay, I'll take Calvin Ridley.
Over Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Yes.
Okay, what do we bet?
Well, I don't know. What do you think we should bet? Let's bet a nice steak dinner. Classic bet. Steak dinner.
I can't wait to forget about this. I win and no one brings this up.
I'll write it down right now. I'm clicking the pin. I'm writing it down.
You click that pin, and that thing is getting thrown away within the next 47 minutes.
No, I keep all my notes. I'm a hoarder. I'm a hoarder for this sweet, sweet content. But Neil, we do have to do, Sterling. I do want to talk about some Chiefs topics kind of heading into training camp. Some questions I've been asking everybody coming on the program with me as we talk about the hot topics surrounding this Chiefs team. But I got to take a break first. Got to pay the bills, so we'll be right back after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Hanging out with Sterling Holmes here on KCS Update, presented by DraftKings. Follow him on Twitter at HolmesStretchKC. Obviously, you know him from ESPN Kansas City Sports Radio 810, the Arrowhead Addict podcast, the Stacking the Box podcast, and Slangin' Holmes as well. He does it all over there in Kansas City. So, Sterling, let's talk about this Chris Jones situation. There's been no resolution, obviously. Teams are off on vacation. These guys are enjoying some downtime before they have to hit the grindstone back again in training camp. So what are your thoughts kind of on the developing saga of Chris Jones, where he shows up at the barbecue event and posts on his social media that he's out Arrowhead and at Chiefs We Out Ya, and he's sick for the ring ceremony? What do you make of that whole conundrum?
Who doesn't want barbecue? Fair. Come on. He's a Kansas City Chief. He lives in Kansas City. He wants barbecue. Now, they're just waiting for Quinnen Williams. We know what this is. There's not really any news, in my opinion, surrounding this. We're waiting for Quinnen Williams to get his deal done with the Jets. Then Chris Jones can up him by whatever it ends up being, $1, $1,000, $1 million. We'll see. But end of the day, Chris Jones will be the second highest paid defensive lineman in the NFL. It just comes down to Quinnen. And the Chiefs and Chris Jones seem to be on the same page here. There's no disconnect. There's no wondering what's going on. There's no Stephon Diggs-Bills situation where all that drama is unfolding. We know what this is. He wants his money, and he's going to wait until Quinnen Williams gets his deal signed. Part of that is, I'd say the majority of it is from his camp. Why would he sign before Quinnen? It makes no sense. It makes no sense unless you think Quinnen Williams is getting paid $21 million. No one thinks it's happening. There's a reason why Quinnen's not signed yet. He wants 25, 26 plus. We know the holdup. It'll happen.
It is. It just seems like, I don't know if semantics is the right word, but just it's kind of is. It's just like the numbers. You're waiting on the numbers to come out. I don't think it's really anyone anticipates him not to be signed, right? Because, he can still play this year on this deal. Wouldn't be very good business for the Kansas City Chiefs to let him play a year on this deal. because yesterday's price is not today's price, is in the famous saying goes. And, the contract year's undefeated. Shout out Therese Paylor. But would love to see Chris Jones in a new contract. And it helps the Chiefs in the short term as well. It's very financially savvy of them to get a deal done now, because then maybe they can add somebody else to the roster. And it's seeming as the days go by, Sterling, I'm curious to your thoughts on this. I feel like as the days go by, DeAndre Hopkins coming to the Kansas City Chiefs seems more and more unlikely.
Dude, I don't give a hoot nor a holler. DeAndre Hopkins is fine. He's a good player. I'm not disagreeing with the fact that he's a good player, but at some point, I get it. He keeps saying, well, I want to win, but I also want my money. Well, yeah, no bleep, guy. That's everyone in the history of football and sports in the world. Okay? Yeah, you want to win. You also want your money, but at some point, it's either you have to pick one. That's what the NFL is telling you. If you want money, okay, maybe you go to New England. Maybe you go to Tennessee. In Tennessee, New England, you will be the clear-cut wide receiver one. You can get your targets. You can get your numbers. You come to Kansas City, you're the wide receiver one, but you're sitting behind Travis Kelce in the pecking order. We know Mahomes likes to spread the ball around. They're not going to overpay for you. There's a reason why they thought there was a deal with Tyreek Hill. All of a sudden, Devontae Adams got his deal done. Tyreek Hill wanted more money. Referee said, you know what? No, we had our price. We are not going over that. You can kick rocks. You can pack your bags. Don't pack a Coke because you're going to Miami. It's going to be warm down there, which is, it's kind of nice. Doesn't really suck there. But there's a price. Brett Veach won't go over that price. I'm assuming the same thing is done with DeAndre Hopkins. And I get where he's coming from. You see OBJ get 18 mil, 15.5 million up to 18 million. And this is a guy coming off of a major injury, multiple major knee injuries in his career, not been as consistent as him in his entire NFL career. And you're seeing that money going, why can't I receive that? Well, because the Baltimore Ravens overpaid. It happens. So DeAndre Hopkins is stuck in no man's land. If he would have been released earlier, before OBJ, he probably already signs and probably for a larger deal. But a lot of teams already have a relative game plan heading into next season. DeAndre Hopkins was not accounted for. And so guess what? He's still out there.
He is. And I think it's probably the Titans or the Patriots at this point. Those seem like two likely suitors because those are the two teams that can give him the money that he wants. And you bring up a good point of like, yeah, of course he wants money and he wants to win. That's what everybody wants. But this is a very interesting situation because it's a guy who's come out and publicly said that he wants to win and values winning, but then has talked to the Patriots and the Titans, who are not really in any places to win right away. So I do think that saga is very, very interesting. And you brought up Brett Veach and kind of his, I don't want to say stubbornness because I think that has a negative connotation, but he sets a hard line and he says, okay, you're going to take this. You talked about Tyreek Hill. You talked about that with Orlando Brown even. He kind of set the line and said, this is what we're offering you. Take it or leave it. It sounds like they kind of did that with DeAndre Hopkins. This is what we're willing to pay. Then that deal came out and he said, well, I'm going to go explore. Is that something they do with L'Jarius Sneed? Is that where they draw that line in the sand and say, okay, this is what we're willing to pay you? L'Jarius Sneed could be worth a lot of money and could be very valuable as a trade asset for the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you foresee L'Jarius Sneed playing past this contract that he is on in Kansas City?
I much prefer asking this question than getting asked this question. L'Jarius Sneed is a fascinating case study of what's going to happen because L'Jarius Sneed would be the outlier. Kansas City and Brett Veach era, but even going back farther, Brandon Flowers, Brandon Carr, Marcus Peters, obviously Trevarius Ward, they were not re-signed.
Right.
One of the things I find at least slightly interesting is I don't know if L'Jarius Sneed is going to actually cost as much as some people think. He's not a traditional outside-only corner. Like Trevarius Ward is the outside corner that always goes up against the best wide receiver ones for the most part of other teams. Marcus Peters for a lot of his tenure did the same thing too.
Right.
L'Jarius Sneed a lot of times in the slot, he travels occasionally. He traveled with DK Metcalf, right? But it was such an outlier that we still talk about it. I love L'Jarius Sneed. His versatility is unparalleled of anyone else on Kansas City's secondary. He's the new version of Tyrann Mathieu to an extent as far as being the Swiss Army knife, if you will. They'll blitz him. He can tackle well. But again, I think it comes down to the overall market might not be the same as a traditional outside corner. So that actually might behoove Kansas City to keep him. It's the same thing with tight ends. Like Travis Kelce should be getting paid way, way more than he does.
Right.
But the tight end market isn't there. The slot corner market isn't the same as the outside corner market. It might not just be there. I think that actually might help Kansas City.
I think it could as well. It's going to be, as you mentioned, a very interesting case study to look at for what the Chiefs do have, because they, and I think this part of this as well is when you come to talk about L'Jarius Sneed, you can't talk about how successful they had as a draft class in the secondary last year. And that kind of backs up Brett Veach's understanding of, I'm just going to go find these guys. They're going to play for me for 4 years, and then we'll dish them out and get more cheap guys. He was able to do that. He let Charvarius Ward walk and was able to replace him with, I guess Trent McDuffie's kind of a higher priced, you could say, in air quotes, asset, but he's still got some really good production out of Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, guys like that are mid to late round and undrafted guys. He's been able to do that his whole tenure as a GM. And I was interested in kind of his market value, looking him up on Spot Track here. It says that his calculated market value is about 7.4 annual. They anticipate a 4-year, $29 million contract for L'Jarius Sneed, and some comparable players. I think this is really interesting. Rasul Douglas, Mike Hilton, Shaquille Griffith, DJ Reed are some comparable deals that you could see L'Jarius Sneed sign. While those names aren't eye-popping per se in terms of, the talent of those are the kind of the deals that you can think, and statistically, he might be the best one of all of those, to be honest.
I will say I wanted DJ Reed to Kansas City so bad. When he was a free agent, I was like, oh yeah, give me DJ Reed. And then of course he balled out last year.
Yep.
But again, that's my whole point. That's about half of 60% of Charvarius Ward. That kind of keeps going to my point. I don't think his market is quite as robust as the majority of people here think, just based on the traditional outside cornerback, lockdown cornerback market. Again, not saying he's not worth it here to Kansas City, not saying he's not valuable, not saying he's not as good as those guys. I'm just saying, again, based on the positional value, that does help Kansas City out a lot. If it's in that price range, I foresee him being back. If you're looking at 14 mil, 13 mil per year, I would say he's probably gone. And the reason being is, now that I don't like L'Jarius Sneed, I love Sneed. But you mentioned it. All those guys, those unheralded guys, they find ways to make a factor in this Brett Veach. Just Brett Veach. We're talking Rashad Fenton as a 6th-rounder playing in the Super Bowl. We're talking about a 7th-rounder and 4th-rounder, Joshua Williams and Judd Watson playing in the Super Bowl. 1st-rounder McDuffie, let's take him out of the equation for a second. Once upon a time, L'Jarius Sneed was that unheralded guy. He was a 4th-rounder.
Yeah.
Charvarius Ward was an undrafted free agent that was traded for Parker Enger. Like, if you want a case study of this, the Chiefs are the case study of this.
It's going to be a very interesting thing, too, because I know trading him has been talked about, as you mentioned, but we talk about his market as well. I don't know how much you could get back for L'Jarius Sneed, how much teams are interested in trading for L'Jarius Sneed, what they could get maybe in the open market if they wait a year and maybe he does have a good year. They can just get him on the open market and not have to give up any assets for it. It's very interesting. It's an incredibly interesting topic there, and I think this defense, Sterling, I've been talking about this with a lot of people. I think this defense has the potential to be a top 5 unit. I've said it. I know there's some good defenses, but if they played up to their potential on paper, I think that this defense could be clearly the best one in the Patrick Mahomes era. But I think that they could be pretty salty this year.
I will say best one in the Patrick Mahomes era. I think Spags is going to have a field day with the amount of versatility. This just feels like a Spags dream right here. Top 5, though, I can't get behind, man. Top 5 feels a little aggressive. I think top 10, I think anywhere from about 8 to 12 is about where I see this defense. Defensive line, for the most part, is really solid, and I do think it's a little underrated that the contracts that cornerbacks, but also edges receive in today's NFL are astronomical. If you have one like Chris Jones, you can afford it. But because you also have 2 edge rushers that are on rookie deals. Well, 2 of your main guys, FAU and George Karlaftis. Not only that, Mike Dana, your rotational guy, is still on a rookie deal. Derek Nottie is back on a cheap deal. Turk Wharton, I think, is back on a cheap deal. You have another interior defensive lineman on a rookie contract, Keandre Coburn. Charles Omenihu, you see what that contract is like? That's why, I mean, it's a decent contract. It's quote unquote a deal from a lot of analytic folks, right? They keep telling me this is a deal, but you look at the amount of money he's getting. That's a good chunk of change. It's why it's so impactful having rookies on rookie contracts at edge. You look at the linebackers. Drew Tranquil was a peach of a signing. He was the 12th best ranked pass coverage linebacker according to PFF last year. By the way, Willie Gay Jr. was 13th. Drew Tranquil also had 5.5 sacks last year. Talk about coverage. Talk about getting after the quarterback. Yeah, he might be a little light, but that's what Nick Bolton and Leo Chenal are for. Leo Chenal was from week 15 to the Super Bowl, the third-ranked linebacker in run defense. So he has a skill set that you can play with Drew Tranquil, Willie Gay Jr., and Nick Bolton. They all bring something different to the table. And then in the secondary, you have 6 safeties. If you count Najee Johnson, because I think Najee Johnson is going to make the roster as a special teams ace fill-in for Chris Lamons. You have Amari Connor, Deion Bush as a also special teamer. You have Mike Edwards as your ball hawk. You have Brian Cook as your thumper. You have Justin Reed as your leader. Then you go out at the cornerbacks, and we talked about it already. I mean, there's just so much versatility. I think it's a defense that's greater than the sum of its parts.
Listen, you hit the nail on the head. That's what I've been preaching this whole time. I do think that, like, you mentioned like 8 to 12 for this defense. I don't think I know I'm being aggressive by saying top 5 defense. I get that. I understand that's kind of my bold prediction for this year.
What are you using for top 5? Like what ranking? Because I think yards and points have to be thrown out the window because
correct
with the way the Chiefs score offensively, teams are going to have more opportunities. They're going to have to push the ball.
Absolutely.
So I always think yards and points when used against the Chiefs defense, it's always going to be an uphill battle. I think EPA, DVOA, those might be two of the better. They're analytics, but not quite as
metrics.
They're metrics. They're metrics. I think those might be better just based on the traditional way the Chiefs play because offensively, they're too damn good. The offense is so good for Kansas City, it skews what the defense can put up.
Absolutely. And I think that probably DVOA is probably the one that comes to mind when I think of like ranking defenses, right? EPA per play or EPA or just EPA per play in general could be one use. But I think DVOA, especially when you talk about whole units of like offenses or defenses, that's one that I go to traditionally. But I do think that, I know it's an aggressive prediction. But I think if they all do play up to, where they're supposed to be, which, listen, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen where players play up where they're supposed to be. There's going to be guys play up to where we don't expect them to be. It's going to be very interesting. I think the defense could be a really big talking point for this season. And if you give Patrick Mahomes a good defense, it's crazy to think he's won 2 Super Bowls with some like very average defenses. What can he do with a good one? I'm very excited to find out.
Yeah. Again, I'm more excited for Spags. This is Spags just waking up and going, oh my gosh. It's not all rookies anymore. We went through that last year. Chiefs went through that last year, and Spags was, he's like, I like having rookies, but not all at the same time. Well, guess what? He now has guys who were rookies in his second year. They went through the growing pains you're hoping. Spags has the ability to disguise a lot with the linebacker group with Willie Gay Jr. and Drew Tranquil. The ability to have the NASCAR package with Mike Dan on the inside, but also Charles Minahu on the inside now. That's a souped-up NASCAR package. I mean, I think you're going to see Spags really throw the kitchen sink in some of those tougher games. You might not see it against the Chicago Bears, but later on in the year against the Bengals and the Eagles and the Bills, the Chargers, and games that matter, Spags is going to have some fun.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to see it. I'm excited for something to happen so we can stop just talking about what ifs with this Kansas City Chiefs team. But we're almost at training camp. We're almost there. I'll be out there giving you guys the updates for it. But Sterling, I really appreciate you hopping on with me, talking some Chiefs. And listen, power ranking those receivers. Tough task ahead of us. And we've got a bet to remember. So I'm sure the YouTube commenters will keep us, they'll keep us honest with this one.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, baby.
I love your confidence. That's going to do it for today's KCSN update presented by DraftKings. Appreciate you listening and following along wherever you do. Follow Sterling on Twitter at HomestretchKC. Follow myself on Twitter at Tucker D. Franklin. Follow KC Sports Network on Twitter at KC Sports Network. We're going to be back with more KCS and updates. I'll be back again tomorrow with an episode that you're not going to want to miss. It's a very special one. Very excited for it. I don't want to give it away. So you just have to subscribe. You have to trust me. You're going to have to like. You're going to have to follow. You're going to have to turn that notification bell on. You have to do all those good stuff for that episode. So until then, I'll talk to you later.